Can you beat Poppy Playtime Chapter 3 while carrying Huggy Wuggy throughout the game? Well, not this Huggy, but this one. We all know Huggy Wuggy had that tumble at the end of Chapter 1, so we're going to attempt to successfully drag our lifeless friend throughout Chapter 3. This won't be Huggy's first trip like this, as we attempted the same challenge in Chapter 2. But in Chapter 3, we're going to encounter some more, frustrations as we attempt to get our blue fuzzy friend through all this chaos. Without further ado, I hope you enjoy this challenge in Chapter 3. So Huggy Wuggy's pumped and ready for this trip, but for those of you that don't know, he can no longer stand. He simply collapses to the ground from all the excitement, or perhaps that fall from Chapter 1. So for this trip, Huggy Wuggy is going to be heavily sedated, as he'll be getting dragged throughout this adventure. Starting off, we can see CatNap dragging us, as Huggy plays dead in the background. I'm thrown down the pipe, and then tasked with quickly getting myself out of this trash compactor, along with Huggy. With zero help from him, we managed to escape, avoiding a crushing blow. I learned quickly and early on in the game that I'm at risk of crashing the game sometimes. If I grab and pull Huggy while I'm pulling my character up, like you see here, the game will crash. So I'm gonna have to be careful to avoid doing certain actions at the same time. So, by pulling him up after I've gotten up here, we can avoid the game crashing. At this next part with the pistons, I just placed Huggy below the exit of the room, traversed the pistons, and simply pulled them up. You'll notice throughout this run that Huggy's body can be in the way at sometimes, which is why I need to try my best at keeping him behind me. I mean, just look at how our point of view shakes all around as I attempt to stand on him. It's definitely annoying to deal with and easy to get stuck. Pressing on, the next obstacle involves some more pistons, and as you may have guessed, I'm not going to drag him across these. I'm going to play it safe and pull him to, oh dear God, do not fall. Okay, let's just get you, there we go. That was too close. So, I'm going to put him on the edge here, then run across these pistons and attempt to drag him from here. Things start looking bad, as I nearly lose Huggy as I reel him in. I then find myself getting tangled up in a walkway as I struggle to pull him up. Switching hands ends up saving the day, allowing me to pull Huggy up to safety without losing our blue boy for good. Something I learned here is that if I hold onto Huggy while attempting to ride this moving platform like this, the platform will just move from under my feet, dropping me to my death. Glorious! So instead, I'll just grab him after we're already over here. Dragging Huggy through vents can be aggravating. Even in Chapter 2, this was brutal. I learned the hard way that there's no way to push Huggy if you happen to need to backtrack in the vents. Oof! However, after restarting, we can get him through this vent and progress forward quite easily as we gather these batteries and open this door. Watching the crosshair on screen allows me to see if I'm successfully dragging him, which is convenient. I charge my hand, drag this lazy boy up the stairs, and gain entry into the room where we answer the ringing phone. Following this, I drag Huggy through this broken down railroad track as we progress. After solving the puzzle in the maintenance room, Huggy and I make my way up these stairs as we enter this cable car that loads us into the next section of the game. When loading in, you can see I was having trouble with Huggy, with his head being stuck in the ceiling of our ride. I imagine he has to have a splitting headache, but as you can see, he's not giving up. After getting down here, we need to head into this authorized personnel area, where we get a key and then go back to the door near the cable car we rode in on. So, we make our way into here, where we'll then be loaded into another area. This is where the gas production zone is, and after thinking about it, I realized I could technically leave Huggy here, as I end up back here eventually. That seems too easy though, so we're not going to do that. However, let's grab this battery, open the door, and get our purple hand. Now we can make this jump and continue this burdened adventure. We now have some jumps to make, which are easiest to jump first, then grab our blue friend. It wasn't until I got to this jump where I found myself struggling though. I had to get myself over the fence as I attempted to grab and pull Huggy in the process. I eventually did end up getting both Huggy and myself safely over though. We'll encounter another puzzle, which, as you may have guessed, doesn't vary much, regardless of our limp friend's presence. This follows with bringing the gas machine online, as the power cuts out shortly after. Exiting the gas production zone, we'll go ahead and get the key to Home Sweet Home now and make our way there. Once inside, this room with the gas within ended up getting the best of me. As I entered the room, I forgot that it actually loads you into another area. As a result, you can see my hand is through the door and I'm essentially stuck. Following the arm reveals that I'm not even holding Huggy anymore. I ended up having to restart, as you may have guessed. This whole PT-inspired sequence that involves walking these halls for quite some time does not allow the player access to their grab pack. So, no dragging Huggy. We'll just leave him passed out on the floor next to us during this dream sequence. Huggy invades our dream though in a monstrous form, and then we wake back up. It's only once we load in, after that chase, that we can continue our adventure with a more fuzzy, lovable, and lifeless Huggy. We then head down below through this hole in the floor as we start up this race car to clear out our next path. The sections where we need to have a mask on are sort of annoying, but with proper positioning of Huggy and good old powerlifting, we can get through this fairly easily. The following area basically involves a scavenger hunt for batteries. Who would have guessed? I did hit a snag though, because I forgot to follow a rule I established earlier. I ended up trying to drag Huggy as I pulled my character up at the same time and crashed the game in the process. Unglorious. Reloading the game, as you can see, if I'm careful with how I handle Huggy, this entire part isn't too difficult. Seeing as there aren't really any threats to be concerned with outside of crashing the game, I slowly but surely make my way through it. So we put the battery in, grab Huggy, and carry on. This brings us to another race car that's ready to destroy another door. After doing so, we're tasked with another puzzle-like area where we need to power on multiple doors. At this point, my priority is obviously making sure Huggy is with me at all times. Everything goes smoothly in that regard, and I'm able to retrieve another battery from this giant, creepy, smiling critter. I then make my way to this vent to make my escape, and oh wait, Huggy is being difficult. How perfect. I feel like I'm dealing with an unruly child that doesn't want to listen at all. A child who, for reasons unexplained, was hit with a tranquilizer dart. And then I paid the ultimate price as Huggy falls on top of me in the vent like a wet blanket. This is bad news and results with me getting stuck, with having no way out of the situation. So I sadly restart at the most recent checkpoint. Progressing through the vent and to the next part shows it's a very similar situation as before, as we need a second battery to move forward. So we power up some more doors, send another race car to its demise, and traverse through some more deadly red gas. This leads us to a second battery and, Huggy, get over here! That's better. Jeez. I then grabbed the battery and brought it back to where it needs to be plugged in. This, in turn, eventually leads to another puzzle area which we can get through quickly with no issue. I did, however, end up making things more difficult for myself than they need to be, by merely not getting Huggy on this lift as we went up. So now, there we go. That was a close one. That does it for Home Sweet Home though. So we make our way out, and it's here where Kissy grabs us, and we have this interaction with Poppy. I legit jumped at this part merely because I forgot about it with being so focused on my VIP Huggy. As you may have guessed, this whole sequence plays out about the same as it would have with or without Huggy. So after having story time with Poppy and turning the power back on, we say farewell to both of them as Kissy waves goodbye. Poor Kissy. I know the future. Moving on, it's now time for the next section of the game, which I've been dreading this whole time. The school. As you all know, we're not alone in here, and it's Miss Delight who will start speaking to us over the intercom, as she eventually admits that she remembers our character. After plugging a few batteries in, amongst other tasks, we'll end up finding ourselves in this horrific chase with Miss Delight herself. The big thing with this whole part is I have to make sure Huggy isn't obstructing my path, because that can mess with my point of view, and we don't want that. As long as I keep her in my sight, both Huggy and I should be safe. It's probably better that Huggy is unconscious for this endeavor. This chase proved to be a little more difficult, seeing as I had to make sure Huggy was with me at all times. There was an instance where I got cornered, and as I was trying to escape, Huggy's body started to cause me to glitch, ultimately killing me in the process. With some patience and decent maneuvering, I managed to reach the room where we had to do a bunch of battery swapping. Once again, I just have to be careful with where I put Huggy, so he doesn't foil this attempt. Outside of that though, I managed to secure the batteries I need and are now able to prepare for my escape. As you can see though, I am completely struggling with the entire thing. I do end up with both batteries in my hands and manage to get one secured, following with a desperation throw with the other, hoping it will just lock in. I'm relieved that it worked, and as you can see, I just wanted to get out there ASAP. We can see Miss Delight teleport as I'm trying to drag Huggy, but luckily she's pretty slow during this part of the chase. Until we pull the lever that is, but you know what I mean. In the end, Huggy and I escape the clutches of Miss Delight, as she gets destroyed by this door. This follows with us acquiring the flare gun hand as we make our way into this cave section. The entirety of this area involves a lot of jumping, which isn't all bad. With one of the first jumps you have to make, you can see how pulling Huggy as I fall from the jump causes Huggy to push me down faster. It definitely caught me off guard, but these following jumps were sort of irritating to navigate with Huggy. For those who don't know, powering up all these jump pads is temporary, as they'll shut off eventually. I think it was a sign that this part was gonna suck, as I get Huggy stuck in the floor on this walkway. On the first jump, mind you. After freeing him from the floor, I start over, and manage to get him up a few floors though. Not quite all the way there, but close. After a few failed attempts, I started the power back up and then managed to get Huggy and myself through this obstacle. Continuing on, I drag Huggy along this walkway, which leads to another circuit jumping puzzle. As you may have guessed, this part is simple, because we could just leave Huggy in a safe spot as we correctly set up this puzzle. Once all done, I dragged Huggy over in a glitchy manner, got on the lift, and then powered it up to make our escape. It's here where we'll see CatNap worshipping the shrine. But after a few drops down below and some hand-holding, we make our way into the playhouse. The playhouse was not fun. I think it had to do with how much more closed in it was. Not having as much room to work with made this entire section pretty painful to get through. Not only am I working with one hand to drag Huggy now, but I gotta fend off these little critters with the other. Oh look, Huggy's smothering me and I can't move. Great. Yeah, I'm stuck. This is embarrassing, Huggy. Please stop. Starting over, I had to remind myself that Huggy, sadly, isn't going to be fully cooperative for this adventure. Patience is going to be the key here once again. Just kidding, I decided to run to the next loading area where the critters will start spawning from. Now that that's done, I can make my way back to Huggy and not worry about any critters immediately spawning by me, since the previous ones unloaded. I had to be careful going down the slides, as I didn't want to leave Huggy behind. We've now made it to the section where we need to avoid more critters though, as we're tasked with pulling each of these large blocks onto these buttons. This will power up the contraption in the center of the room, allowing us to progress. It was definitely a battle at first, trying to keep these little guys at bay, although I didn't have too much trouble here because I was able to get just enough of these critters stuck. This allowed me the time to get through this part much more easily with Huggy. However, like from earlier when the platform took off and left me behind, this one did the same exact thing and ended up being the cause of my death. This is because I hung onto Huggy as the platform moved. So my second attempt, I activated the platform, then grabbed Huggy as we were transported to the other side. Quickly fending off the critters, I'm able to safely get Huggy and myself out of the section and move on. From here, we head down some stairs, through a pool room, and arrive at this horrific scene. DogDay is here, and most of you will know that this is about to turn into a chase sequence. So I prepared and positioned Huggy to the best of my ability while DogDay was talking. These floorboards will break once the chase starts, so I stared at them, patiently waiting for the chase to begin. And we're off. The one thing on my mind during this chase was to make sure Huggy doesn't somehow get in front of me. Of course, that's exactly what ends up happening, causing me to get stuck as DogDay devours us. My next attempt goes much better, but I do have a few close calls while running for my life. I began to panic because I could see Huggy was dragging behind as if DogDay was blocking him. I went down the slide realizing that Huggy may be stuck and potentially didn't make it. I kept pulling and pulling though, and luckily he came tumbling down. DogDay makes one last attempt to destroy us, but I get myself and Huggy to safety, ultimately clearing the playhouse as we exit this section. It's now time to once again grab a key and head to the counselor's office. The beginning of the section plays out in a similar fashion as the school and playhouse, so of course we gotta find some batteries. It's always batteries, isn't it? Anyways, eventually we'll find ourselves entering this more open area as I nearly throw Huggy off the edge here. That was too close. This follows with another circuit puzzle, which proves to be easy enough despite the baggage we're carrying. I mean, our friend Huggy, of course. Once completing it though, I can simply cross over to the exit and grab Huggy before moving on. Eventually we get up into the vents again, and it's here where Huggy, once again, screws everything up. So I pulled him down with me in fear of accidentally leaving him behind. As you can see though, it results with me getting stuck in this darn vent. Joy! Huggy doesn't really seem fazed by this debacle. After getting unstuck, we then solve this battery puzzle with our handy dandy gas mask. Following this is another puzzle before we can advance. I'll save my breath and just say it took a minute to complete, but I obviously solved this puzzle with no issues occurring. Shortly after, we then get ambushed by CatNap, where this hallucinating scene occurs. CatNap then threatens us, and it's at this point where we need to leave the counselor's office and hook up some cords. Ollie gives us a big blue battery that we'll need for the gas production zone, which is where we'll be heading next. Getting in here, I just need to set Huggy up in a spot where I can grab him, but also make sure he's not in the way. So I initiate this chase with CatNap, successfully evade him, and then have our usual staring contest as we make our way up. It's here where we'll begin our final showdown with CatNap. So, if I'm gonna be honest, this part isn't bad at all. That is, if you're familiar with the sequence of events, of course. Placing Huggy here, though, seemed to be a good spot, so I went ahead and began the fight. As you may have guessed, this fight with CatNap doesn't vary too much despite the presence of Huggy Wuggy. Regardless of CatNap's attempts to kill us, we let him know this isn't our first rodeo, as we deny him access. Even Huggy was able to give me an assist as I go to throw the battery and it bounces off him and into the slot. CatNap eventually makes his last attempt to get us, but we deny him with an electrifying high five. The prototype finishes the job, and then we never see CatNap again. Poor kitty. The rest of the journey is pretty straightforward though, with no real threats taking place. Kissy shows up, and then 3 of us get on this elevator where we're lowered down. Kissy dies, so Huggy can live. It makes me shed a tear. And with that, we managed to drag Huggy Wuggy throughout the entirety of Poppy Playtime Chapter 3. I hope you enjoyed this strange challenge, subscribe for more videos like this one, and I'll see you all soon on HorrorScoped. Cheers!